All right, good morning. I hope you're doing well. So nice to have you here. Pat is here. Good morning. Nice to see you. Happy Mother's Day. Absolutely. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers of the world. At least here in Madison, it's a absolutely gorgeous spring day. So hope you're able to enjoy the day. Today, I'm going to be talking about two of my very favorite things, coffee and fasting. So one of the things I like about this so much, for me, it's the morning. Morning is a great fasting space. Fasting today, got a coffee. We can be fasting and drinking coffee while talking about fasting and coffee. So it's just perfect, really, I say. Fasting to me is about finding contentment in the body. So much of that is like coffee too. So check out these beautiful beans getting ready. If coffee's not your thing while we're talking today, every time we're saying coffee, just pick your favorite calorie-free beverage and a lot of the same things. Finding a favorite beverage, if that's tea, if that's just water, you can find a lot of benefit from focusing on such a beautiful, simple thing. And for coffee, a lot of people, coffee is that, especially in the morning. Something simple and enjoyable that helps you pass a space in a thoughtful and content fashion. So grab a mug if you're inclined, and we'll dial in together on some good thoughts on that. I'm going to be going through a little series of 5 barriers that people have to fasting. So stick with me for that. I hope you like that. The Pat says, thoughts on Sacred 7 mushroom coffee. I love it. I just got my first pack of mushroom coffee that my parents actually gave me yesterday. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad. I haven't tried it out today, and I thought, on the show, I'll just stick with my regular coffee today. But tomorrow, I will be trying it out. So I will let you know. I mean, I think as a concept, it's great. And I think mushrooms in general, fungi, so much fascinating research on benefits of that. And so getting some of that in a boost in the morning seems good to me. I'll let you know in coming weeks what I think about it. But yeah, let me know in the chat if you're here with me now. We got the mushroom coffee. What is your favorite way to do coffee, and do you have it black? A black coffee in general, which I think the mushroom stuff pretty consistent with. I have to look into it. I didn't really look. How do you like to have it? But black is what keeps it in like the pure fasting space. And some of the materials I put together on the Simple Fasting website and in other coffee video I have on the channel. So it's not that you can't put some creamer in it. It's not that a little sugar is going to be the end of the world, but it's not the pure fasting. And these things can have, even more than calories, can have hormonal impacts. I think we're kind of coming out in the nutrition or weight loss space, like out of the calorie era and into a more holistic, comprehensive sort of approach where we recognize, okay, different foods have different effects on the body. It isn't all just about calories. And hormones control how calories are processed. And so we really want to control the hormonal state in the body as much as we can, influence that into a healthy, balanced space. And so keeping pure coffee, black coffee, tea, water, anything without calories is going to keep you in that sort of space for sure. Can you get by with a little something in there? Maybe you can. I always say don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So we want, first and foremost, we want our mental health in the best place. And then, I've definitely talked to people where they say, oh, I'm never getting the creamer out of my coffee. But I just say, that's fine. Like, have an open mind to it. And if you accomplish everything that you want, don't worry about it. And if you're struggling, if you're stuck at some point, realize it's something that you can work on over time. There's no rush. So let me show you a few things. So coffee trends. This is something that I think is very interesting. I followed this little report. Oops, I got to learn how to use my own setup. I followed this little report for a little while, National Coffee Data Trends. The actual full report of this is actually quite expensive if you want all your questions answered. But they give the big highlight for free on their site, which is that in 2025, we're up to 66% of Americans drinking coffee daily in 2025. And that, I think they say, is up like 7% over the last 5 years. I can't dig into all the data here to say how many people, at least weekly, the last one, they gave that one away was, well over 70% having coffee at least weekly. That's actually the zone where I am at. I don't have coffee every day. And that is kind of a personal decision because I've gone through a number of cycles in my life of overdoing it on coffee, like starting with my medical residency. And so I really love coffee. I really enjoy it. So many health benefits and positive things to come from it. And then I like to balance that out with have tea in the morning, have water, one day a week, and just kind of balance that out. It keeps me on track, personally. So the big takeaway on the data is a lot of people drinking a lot of coffee and liking it. So that's kind of the background. And then the big thing that I like to compare that to is where we're at in the country with weight trends. And I've reviewed, different data on where we're at. I like the pretty colors of this New England Journal image. Maybe you've seen that, the big picture in our society, right? Here's the 90s. This is incidence rate, 10%, and head into the 2000s, 15% of people who are struggling with obesity. And then, here we are in the 2010s and now 2020s. And now this image is from a few years ago, but even with, all of the therapies and special injections and things that are here, the modeling, even for the future, the irony to me is the share price of the companies that make these products, it only goes up. It was like someone said, what was the quote once? The best doctor wouldn't have any patients, right? Everybody would be healed, Not a lot of people expecting this problem to be solved when the share price of the companies that are making the products that, it's not solving the problem is what I'm trying to say. If you want to get to a level below that, I'm not opposed, I'm not opposed to medicines and things. Everything has its place. But if you want to get to the deeper level, you've got to address the fundamental aspects of the system, the hormones, the mental state. And that's where I want to get to, on this channel with fasting and creating an environment that is calm, thoughtful, positive, that helps people for free without having to take expensive pharmaceuticals if you don't want it, and get to the root level where you can use the energy in the body. And that's where I think coffee can really come in and help, because this is what I want to do, bring these two things together, the fasting connection. we've got a lot of people loving a lot of coffee, but not a lot of people thinking of it as a fasting aid or even as a medicine. Sometimes, I was listening to some public health people debating, like, is food a medicine? And one person was trying to say, of course it is, because it's like really the stuff that brings health and wholeness to the body. And another person was saying, you're just ridiculous to say that. And I was thinking about my own perspective on this. To me, a medicine is just anything that helps somebody, right? And so I've been in different debates with people about this type of thing, where they're trying to say, food isn't a medicine. I was like, well, is physical therapy a medicine? Like, that's part of the medical system. I was like, look, if you hurt your elbow, and then you can go to somebody and say, take a rubber band and go like this for a while, and then it'll be better. And then it is. Say, well, that's clearly medicine. Okay. So medicine doesn't just have to be a pill. Medicine doesn't have to only come from a pharmaceutical company, right? Medicine, if we open our mind to it, can be all kinds of different things. And if a coffee can be the thing that you say, hey, I like this. This helps me feel comfortable and positive. And then that is actually a thing that helps you move forward in a fasting space, that lets you burn through extra blood sugar, reset the hormonal structure of the body, access energy storage, lose weight, feel better. Like, it's pretty hard to say that isn't in some sort of medicinal genre. So coffee as medicine is something that I think is it's at least fun to think about. Even if it isn't true, you say, like, well, can it be true for me? Like, this is my, coffee therapy, and it's going to help me get through a space. I think it's a thoughtful way to think about it. Fasting isn't that far away. Yeah, that's the point that I want to make, is like people, in our culture, you go on YouTube, obviously there's big YouTubers talk about fasting. People written best-selling books on fasting. So there's like, I would call it a subculture, that is open to this or used to thinking about these sorts of things. But it certainly isn't the prevailing culture. The thing that I'm really interested in is connecting. Most people still told, even within the regular medical system, well, this isn't really, it's kind of an out there thing. That's not the standard medical advice. Probably not something you're going to want to stick with in the long term. Hasn't been my experience. I think that, personally, we're coming around a decade that I've been personally doing this practice. I love it personally, has brought much health to me. I have many patients who are, similarly have been at this 7-8 years. People have found it to be such a positive part of their life. So, but someone just hearing it, if you're just checking this out, if you're listening to it, say, oh, fasting, the word just sounds so intense, there's a lot of connotation around it. And try to say, a lot of times people might even be doing it already without even knowing it. Like, do you ever have a day where you get up and you just have a coffee? That's what I want to tell people. Like, that's a fasting space right there. And maybe you just don't call it fasting. So if we open our mind to it and say, well, a fasting space, a coffee, maybe not such a big deal. Maybe that is something I could do. And that's usually where I have people start. Dip your toe in the water. You don't start running a marathon by just like going out and doing it. You start even walking, you start doing some jogging, you build up your stamina over time. I've just, not to drag us off topic, but I learned about barefoot running and minimalist running over the winter and read some books about it. And I thought, oh, I could never do that. But then the book was like, oh, you just start walking, you start just doing these exercises. I spent a month rebuilding how I run to do barefoot running. And then when I started, even after a month of the exercises, I went out and run a quarter mile, and it was so hard. And, but here I just keep at it, build it a little bit over time. And And now I ran 6 miles in barefoot shoes the other day, and it felt great. And this is the sort of process. That's how I built up a fasting practice. That's how I encourage people to do it. You can approach many obstacles in life that way. Break it down into small, thoughtful steps. And so let's dive in. We got a coffee. How do we move toward this in a thoughtful way like that? I just wrote down 5 barriers that I've encountered with people as they're approaching a fasting process or a weight loss process. Fasting barrier number 1, fear of hunger or discomfort. So it's kind of like, I say, like the elephant in the room, I say, let's just like move right toward that. You're going to start learning to fast, or you're going to practice fasting really in anything. I mean, I did a fast, a longer fast a couple weeks ago. My own personal situation, I've done a huge amount of fasting as I've studied it. What year are we at? 2025. Oh my goodness. Christy is here. Let me throw this up on the screen. So nice to have you here. Running late. It's all good. So nice to have you here. We're chatting about coffee and fasting today. Good to have you here. I never have anybody do any longer fasting. When I'm consulting with people, I have people start on the easiest place for them. I have people ease into it in a place that feels really good. And then I'm talking about, a 16-8 or having OMAD. That's pretty much as far as I ever have people go in any sort of counsel, fashion. There's a lot of open space beyond that can be explored, and there can be great benefit to it. But I never want anyone to feel any pressure or to feel overwhelmed. Encouragement for the journey is with us. Hello, good morning. Nice to have you here. So this is the first place where I feel people struggle, and it might even before you get started. I've definitely talked with people say, "Oh, fasting, interesting concept." I was like, I would not want to do that because I might feel unwell. I might. Queen Bee is here. Good morning also. So nice to have you all here. I think, we've all had experiences in life at some point, where you want to eat, you weren't planning on fasting, you get prevented from doing it. The example I get is something bad happens, you get a flat tire. I often say a lot, you're like, something happens that prevents us from eating, can be very stressful, right? And so we have a culture of thinking, and I also think like these classic commercials, like a Snickers commercial showing like if you don't get the food right away, you turn into this ferocious beast, and you're so hangry and it's awful. And so there's a lot of money and a lot of marketing wanting to sell us products and things to fix a problem of hunger. From my perspective, like true hunger, right? People suffering in poverty and, these things, that's true hunger, right? And that's something that we want to eradicate, right, from our world. The hunger that we experience in a place here, in America where I am, right, this is not hunger with like a capital H, right? But we are in an environment. It is a consumption culture here. It is a place where we have the cultural mindset, the conditioning to say that like if you're feeling hungry, it's probably dangerous, and you're probably doing something bad for yourself. And then it can feel that way. And I totally want to be open. And encouragement here says that, I definitely relate with it. We have easy access to food, but then we feel like, oh, if we're not in that cycle, okay, and medical nutritionists, bless them, right? And they want people to have good nutrition. I want that. And then this is the line that we have to have. Every time I say fasting, basically, I've said this a lot of times, fasting and healthy eating to me are two sides of the same coin. And of course, anything can be taken to an extreme. Fasting could be taken to an extreme. When I put on every video a link to my video on contraindications to fasting. Of course, every time I've given tons of talks on fasting. And usually at a place like that, someone, because eating disorder is very common in our society, also a very difficult thing to deal with. Sometimes people come to a talk who have an eating disorder, historically struggle with it. And so for someone to come in and then hear about fasting, to them that it can even be offensive, right? If you have gotten over that. And so we always have to be looking at that middle space and to say, okay, we have complex relationships with food. Food is, it interacts so much with our emotional state, and we use food in different ways. And one of which, as Christy is saying, like boredom, stress, right? And we'll get into that in another barrier. So fear of being hungry, a big thing that might keep people from fasting before they even start. And I gotta stop doing that. There we go. How does coffee help with a fear of hunger or discomfort? So the first one is caffeine, all right? So that's something to dial in on. Caffeine, maybe even you're drinking decaf, there's still caffeine in decaf, about similar to like a black tea. And caffeine is a natural appetite suppressant. So see if you find that to be the case. If you have caffeine from whatever source, right, that is going to help blunt the hunger effect. So that's part of what is happening when you're drinking coffee in a fasting space, that is helping you to feel content. And do you feel that way? I know I've experienced that. And you can titrate, you can adjust that a little bit. Depending on, are you drinking coffee, just regular coffee? Are you drinking decaf? Are you splitting the difference and going half calf? That's what I do a lot. Caffeine, it can be a little double-edged sword, like I said in the beginning. Too much caffeine can have side effects, can raise blood pressure, can increase a feeling of anxiety, can exacerbate insomnia. And so you don't want to overdo it on caffeine, but some caffeine is a natural stimulant, suppress appetite, and for many people, that helps them to get through. Second one is just water. Some people say, oh, caffeine or coffee dehydrates you, and I'll just tell you that that isn't the case. Caffeine, with its stimulant property, can increase your need to urinate. It can. It's not squeezing the water out of you. It is water. It is mostly water. So it is actually hydrating. It's giving you water. A lot of what we experience as hunger is actually thirst. And so when we stay hydrated, when we're bringing liquid in, right? That's hitting sensors, is telling the body, okay, water is here. We're experiencing that coming in. That's hitting satiety centers. So you experience the same thing just drinking water, right? That's why it doesn't have to be coffee. Any calorie-free beverage is fine. So staying hydrated, having a little caffeine, and it's comforting, right? Do you find it? Coffee is warm. I mean, you could have a nice coffee, right? But most people say, oh, if you're struggling with hunger, warm, comforting beverage, hydrating, little stimulant. It's kind of like the perfect thing. That's why, and I get to this at the end, I call coffee contentment in a cup, right? Like if you're trying to get in a space where you're feeling content, to me, coffee it hits a lot of spaces. So if you are worried about being hungry, if you have had trouble approaching fasting or leaning into it, I say, have a plan. Maybe something like this could be part of that plan. But the big plan is you don't have to make it a big deal. you can just explore that space in the smallest amount that you want. And if you reach a point where you say like, oh, that's enough, I'm starting to actually experience this hunger that I don't like. Okay, you're just finding the edge of that toleration point. Maybe let's take it in the tiniest bit. What if it was only 10 minutes? You say, every morning I get up, I have breakfast right away. I was like, well, what if you just had the coffee and then you sat in that space for 10 minutes and that was like day one, and then you had your breakfast. And then you sat in that space tomorrow. You say, maybe we stretch it out a little bit. And then you slowly diminish that fear. As you start to experience it, you start to sit on that edge. That can help diminish the fear. And you realize it's not necessarily actually a big deal. Okay, that's a barrier number one. We talk more about any of these as we go along. Barrier number two, concerns about energy and focus. So food is energy, right? And we do need, energy. And so a lot of people say, when we're not used to a fasting space, and then people have had it, they say, oh, I got double booked at work and I had back-to-back meetings. I couldn't get to lunch. And I was so stressed. Part of it, right, is we experience the stress and then we map that on top of the fasting space. And then we equate a fasting with the stress. When we're opening up in the ideal scenario, when we're voluntarily, thoughtfully practicing fasting, where that space ideally is in a low stress, space if possible. But then we've experienced it where we didn't have it and we said, oh, I didn't have energy. And so part of it, fasting is a practice. I like that. Fasting as a practice is something that you get better doing over time because you train the body to do it. And I will tell you, if you talk to people who have been practicing fasting for a long period of time, many people will tell you that after they adjusted to it, that their energy was increased, that their ability to tolerate a space like that without having this dip in energy is actually significantly increased. And that's definitely been my experience. Have you experienced it? Like, this is like a classic thing. You eat some big lunch and then it's like 1 o'clock and it's like you want to take a nap, right? Like this would be my experience, working in the hospital is like, I'd be cruising along, I've been in the hospital since 5 a.m, work. And then it's like, not even hungry. Like I could have, like before I learned about fasting, I was like, I could like sit in that space for a long time. It's like, because many times, I'd do those night shifts coming around. I was like, I couldn't even eat in the morning. It didn't feel good. But I'd get around and it's like, eat some mac and cheese or something from the hospital cafeteria. You can just imagine the insulin spike, the blood sugars going up, and then the crash. And it's like, you keep that hormonal structure normal. Once you're trained to do it, then you're much better. So coffee can help specifically. Okay, coffee, we talked a bit about this with the stimulant effect, right? A lot of people, you want to get dialed in, you might have an extra coffee, right? You might go full caffeine, right? As a natural stimulant, many people find, yeah, coffee can be energizing, coffee can be focusing, and can enhance that sort of space. And yeah, so I guess that's what I said about it, natural stimulant. So the couple things are, fasting in general does not have, in the long term, the energy depletion that we think it does in the short term. Of course, if you never eat or if you are fasting beyond a space that you are trained to do, absolutely, your energy can go down. But what I call simple fasting on the very low end of the spectrum, just opening up 16 to 18 hours of space, that's something that most people can tolerate without a big hit to their energy. And if it's something you're having trouble with or struggling with, then you say, well, this is like a metabolic weakness in the body. And so I look at fasting in that scenario as like a training program. How do you train the body to be able to handle that without having any sort of dip in energy? And then coffee is something to kind of get into that space and help you through it. And just find the edge, never pushing it in a space. And I say, if someone's like, oh, I got some big thing to do. Very important. I was like, well, don't get out of a routine and don't do anything on a big important day that you don't know how your body is going to respond. You know, if someone says, I've eaten breakfast every day and now I've got to go give a big talk at work, I say, well, this probably isn't the day to go practice your new, fasting practice, for example. Okay, fasting barrier number 3, social or cultural pressure. So this is something that I run into absolutely a lot. And that can be like social pressure, like out in the broader world, or it can be social pressure just within your own house or home, So I've been consulting with people, for example, one partner is coming to me, wants to try to lose weight, and the other partner says, no, they have no interest in it. And then that can create a lot of tension, like in a space, whereas like someone is trying to practice fasting, someone else doesn't think it's a good idea. You're getting together with an extended family, for a big thing. Now, easy solution to that is if you're in a socially awkward sort of position, you don't have to push into it, for example. It's like, or it's a holiday. We've talked about that a lot on the channel. Fasting isn't really for a holiday, in my opinion. Like it could be if you have an open mind to it, if it feels right. But it doesn't have to be. But what if you're in the situation where it's like you don't want to eat, but you're feeling pressured to do it, and that can happen a lot. So coffee can help with that in a couple ways. So it's just something to do. Like if you're in a space, like maybe you just feel socially awkward, like that's something I can relate to. You're at a gathering. It's like, you're maybe like a little introverted. You're like, okay, you got something to do. You got something to hold on to, something that in and of itself can help with some social anxiety, and then something to share, right? If, a lot of times, I've talked about my clinical study before. You can have fasting windows at different times in the day, and we could talk about pros and cons of that. In the medical literature, the studies that look at people who eat breakfast and lunch and then fast in the evening, called early time-restricted eating in the literature, that pattern is associated with stronger weight loss than people who fast in the morning and then have a lunch dinner, right? And there's hormonal reasons for that. And so I do think that's true. Now, when I put that to people and I say, which window do you want? Everybody who I ask that to, 95% picks to fast in the morning. And so that's the place to start, because people want to eat at socially acceptable times, like culturally normal times. And that's part of this, is we feel a lot of pressure to eat with people. And also it's nice. When we like to do it. So we like to do it, and then we feel pressure to also conform to it. That's part of what makes fasting in the morning easier, is that it's less social pressure. Breakfast is a less social meal, and for a lot of people is culturally accepted, right? Just to have some coffee in the morning. And so that's a way in that sort of space. You stick with the coffee, nobody really going to question that too much, and it's something that can help you kind of get through that situation. Now, you could do that at later times in the day, lunch, there's not a lot of people drinking a lot of coffee. Some people, I got friends who are doing double espresso, at night. I would never sleep personally. Some people can do it. So it's not that it couldn't help you through that space, but that's going to help you more, if you're fasting earlier in the day, breakfast, brunch, lunch, sort of thing. Yeah, I get into some of these things. Boredom, stress, absolutely. How about adding electrolytes to water? Yeah, this is something that I'm totally open to. And if you're getting electrolytes, there's a lot of like keto diet sort of products that are focused on electrolytes, and some companies I've seen even making fasting type of supplements that are electrolytes. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And electrolytes are great. They don't mess up a fasting interval as long as there aren't artificial sweeteners in it. I never have people do that. But they can be perfectly fine. Now, is it necessary? Like, I've definitely had some people, like rarely, people will say, oh, I start doing some fasting, I get a headache or something. Sometimes coffee help with that. Sometimes electrolytes can help with that. And so if there's any reason that it helps, I say go for it. I don't lead with it. I don't tell people, oh, make sure to do it. Like, if you're getting good, solid nutrition in your eating window, you're going to get all the electrolytes that you need in general, is my opinion. But if you don't feel that that's the case, or if you feel better doing it, I think it's a perfectly fine thing to do. Queen Bee says, when I'm fasting, I get so much done. I think better. Yeah, and this is the sort of thing that I definitely resonate. I did last week, I did a fasting productivity session online. You can always go back and dial into that space. But a fasting space, for me, definitely the most productive. Grab a coffee if that's your thing. Helps you focus. Fasting helps you focus. It's a calm, centered, everything in the body is not, when we eat, about 30% of our blood flow, 20 to 30%, is going to the GI system to help us digest that food. That can be part of, after we eat, why we can feel a little slowed down, it's like, oh, that blood flow is getting shunted there. So you really want to dial in. Fasting can absolutely help you with that, for sure. I make better decisions and more open to God, what he's saying to me. Hey, that's beautiful. A fasting space, it hasn't been invented over the last 10 years. I certainly, obviously, didn't invent it. There's millions of people doing this. But fasting has been part of a tradition, spiritual tradition, medical, cultural tradition for most of human society. And I think for millennia. And people have recognized that there's value here and that health can flow out of this space. And so I think our society, we got caught up, I think, in industrial culture, coming out of the Industrial Revolution. And then, things really went crazy for a while here with industrial agriculture. And it's just the incredible production of food. And we developed, this really intense food culture, the abundance. And I think people are just, and it's a miracle, right? It is a miracle. But I think culturally, people are coming to see, okay, this has been a culture of consumption and excess that isn't really taking us to a better place. And maybe we need to reassess some of these fundamental things. And I think that's why people coming back to fasting is that, this has been part of the human tradition for a long time. And so let's find the balance with it. Okay, fasting barrier number 4 that coffee can help with. Emotional eating habits. So here, Christy, you were saying this too. So people use food to cope with stress, right? And they use food to fill a space so that we don't have to experience boredom. And we could just go down the list of the different ways that we use food as a tool to cope with different things, sadness and anxiety and depression and so many things. Because food, just like any other sort of drug, right? It hits dopamine, it hits these satiety centers, it helps us because it's so intertwined. It's physical, it's emotional, right? And so we build relationships with food. We eat certain things to help us feel, certain ways. And then human beings, right? We are creatures of habit. And so any type of change, right, is always difficult. Always hard to change. And then food, because it's so intertwined with our mental state, then it's one of the hardest sort of things to change. And so when we have something like that, this is a huge barrier. Say, oh, I'm going to start fasting. Now I'm going to open up that space where I was using food to help me with this. Now you say, well, that crutch isn't going to be there, Well, what am I going to do? Okay, maybe coffee to some degree can help fill that gap, and that's what I want to move toward. Just giving you something to do, right? So if you're going to try to open up a space and you say, okay, I'm struggling with some sort of emotional issue right now, or like let's just take boredom as like the most maybe neutral space. Boredom is like before, depression and anxiety and other things on a intensity scale. So I'm not content, right? Often tell people, okay, find a pleasant distraction, right? For some people, that just means, going to work. I'm just going to focus on work, keep, my mind occupied. The space where it's like, I'm just going to sit alone in a room quietly with my thoughts. Okay, if you're struggling with this issue, this is very intense, right? We got into some of that. I did the session a couple months ago on a meditation practice for weight loss to try to move toward root level issues, right? And we talked like that can be very intense, right? So having a coffee, here it is, like you're dialing in on it, like we said in the first barrier, right? It's pleasant, it's warm, it's comforting. Many people feel, okay, this is something that can help me be content. Being content is the opposite of boredom. So boredom is a lack of contentment. In the ideal state, tell me if you would agree. You should be able to be in a space, the ideal, emotional, the emotionally resilient person would not feel bored if they weren't having, some stimulating experience, right? To sit in the room with the thoughts. You should feel contentment. This is like what we should strive for. I'm not saying that's easy, but like coffee could be a place to help bridge that gap. You don't just have to sit there by yourself. Little friendly coffee is with you, and you can experience that. You can taste it. It can help you focus. Here's something to share, right? And this would be, I think, a way to think about it. We often struggle with these sort of things by ourselves, right? So coffee is something, brings people together. People like to get together in a coffee shop, right? For example, oftentimes people connecting in the morning, something, do you want a coffee? Yes. So I would say, can you use that sort of experience relationally? This is like a great use of food. And maybe you say, well, I'm not in a place like right now, maybe you are feeling like you're in a kind of an isolated sort of place. Well, I'm glad that you can connect here. Absolutely connect here. And having something like this, you can, if you enjoy it and take whatever thing yours is, find gratitude for it, have a relationship here with this, and just think of like the whole incredible chain of people all the way from Colombia or wherever it came from, who worked to bring this beautiful gift to you. And then that can start bringing positive energy to it. And you're finding gratitude and moving forward. And say, when you're thinking in that sort of space, then you say, well, not quite so bored, not feeling quite so anxious. And this would be the sort of thing too, if you're feeling like, okay, I'm struggling in this sort of space, emotional eating, okay? Sometimes that is triggered, we talked about socially, it's triggered by all these other things. Okay, can you get through at that space with something like this where, this is a normal thing to do? And can that help you through that space? We could probably spend a ton of time on emotional eating. I think this is like the key sort of thing. So let me know what reflections you have about it, and we dial in more on that. And then the last barrier I'll talk about now, think about what your other barriers are. Throw barriers in the chat. I'm happy to think we can reflect more I just said lack of structure because, like, the eating landscape, at least here in America, has been turned, like, I think it used to be people used to eat twice more. Then we had a marketing campaign to try to sell a lot of cereal. That's how it is, 100 years ago. And then that became part of the culture. And then for a long period of time, we had, 3 squares, right? That was culturally normal, and snacking wasn't a thing. And then somehow, and I think it's money and marketing more than anything, the culture was transformed into basically a culture of continuous consumption. I think the science was arranged to provide justification for people eating all the time. I'll just tell you, it doesn't really work very well for anyone. It takes away all structure. What people really thrive on routine. Most of what we experience as hunger is actually patterns. We get hungry when we're used to eating. When we change our patterns, we change the routine and what we think is normal, the brain adjusts and we tend to get hungry when we are usually eating. So having structure is a tremendous asset in finding contentment, minimizing our negative experiences of hunger. A routine, very positive. Now, some people feel oppressed or burdened by routine. And I was telling you, there's not right or wrong in this sort of space, right? There's just things that work for you and things that don't. So if some person says, I hate routine, I hate the structure, I feel trapped in by it, well, I would never push it onto someone. But I just say, if you look physiologically at what's happening in the body, having a routine and structure is very helpful. And then coffee can be part of a routine that is extremely positive. So this is just enjoyable. Like we said at the beginning, a lot of people, it's like a favorite part of the day. Get up, you're in this fasting space. Maybe you don't even know it. You're feeling calm and content. And then coffee, so nice. That structure, that's why sometimes I was talking to people about like fasting lifestyle. Like, I don't even necessarily like thinking of fasting as like a diet, I don't like that necessarily, at least the negative connotations of it, but like it can just be normal. Like I've joked like in the past when I was saying, I call my little thing simple fasting. I was like, but then I thought about calling it normal eating, because I think just like getting up and having a coffee, it can be it's just a normal thing to do. It doesn't have to be a big deal. And then, if you're eating twice in a day and you're getting a 6-hour window, Queen Bee says, so 12 noon to 6 a.m. This is the sort of thing that I often have people do. I think that's like the default eating pattern for me. Most people naturally, like in survey data, most people tend to really get hungry. 10, 11, 12, is when people starting to get hungry. In our society, people eating a lunch, eating a dinner keeps food at normal social times. So, yeah. Is it better for healing? This is something that, it's hard to say definitively. I don't know the exact answer. That, we could go through, I have stacks of papers, and I always have on my mind, I should do a research series and just start talking through all the literature on these things. There's just great benefit from any fasting window. Having a window that is more open in the evening, maybe it is more intense when you look at our circadian rhythm and cortisol levels and other things. But it's something that I think can just be experimented with. Maybe you're already doing it. So sometimes like I said on that one slide at the beginning, like fasting is not necessarily that far away. We're all fasting overnight. We're fasting while we're sleeping. And so you might not be that far away from it. Or a few changes might open up more space. Like if you can just lean into the coffee, if you're already doing it, or whatever you like in the morning, staying hydrated, you can lean in. You open up a few more hours. That can be like a big difference. So it's probably the easiest way to make space. Yeah. Fasting is just open space. Fasting I call applied nothingness. Like, I love that. We're applying nothing to our life. It is nothing. We embrace this open space. Coffee, you say, is it nothing? It's not nothing, but it's kind of nothing. If you want, someone was really drilling deep on me on it. Like, is black coffee really calorie free? And they were giving me this article, like technically in like 16 ounces of coffee, there's like 1 calorie. And I was like, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. 1 calorie in 3 cups of coffee. Like, I'll just tell you, I don't think that makes any difference. Does 10 calories of creamer make a difference? Maybe, maybe not. Not pure fasting. Is 1 calorie in black coffee in 3 cups? To me, I give that a solid pass. So, coffee fasting, coffee therapy, coffee as medicine, if it helps you do it. I just call it contentment in a cup. Dial in with some coffee if that's your thing. If you'd prefer an herbal tea or a water, like whatever, it's all fine. But like we saw in the data, a lot of people loving coffee. It can help you through a space. It's many other things we could talk about with coffee, all sorts of antioxidants and nutrients and other healthy things in it. So you can feel good about it. You feel good about drinking it. And if it can help you approach a struggle, right? You say, I never push people through a struggle, but there's like good struggle and bad struggle, right? A struggle that is bad is a struggle that is like, I'm feeling overwhelmed. This is making me anxious or depressed or discouraged, angry, frustrated. Those are sort of things that I tell people it's not worth pushing through a space. I always have people pull back from something like that. But a struggle, like I didn't call my process easy fasting, right? Even though some people do find it easy. Okay, some people, they just hear about a fasting, they say, well, that sounds easy. And then their experience is that it is. And so I always give an asterisk when I say fasting isn't necessarily easy. I put an asterisk and say, unless it is, because I don't want to create a self-fulfilling prophecy for anyone. If it's easy for you, bless you, just do it. But everything in life on a bell curve, right? And I'm most interested in the people who are on the other side of the curve where it's actually difficult, because for some people it's like the most difficult thing. And people who find it easy, okay, don't really need any help. You can just do it, and then that's great. People where it is very difficult is who I really want, especially to help, because the struggle in that scenario is like, if you recognize that this is a path. This is a thought I was having the other day. You say, okay, not easy. Fasting, not necessarily easy, but losing weight is not easy, right? And sometimes people struggle for decades to try to lose weight and never have success despite working and working and working at it. That is very, very difficult. And so when I say, okay, simple fasting, not necessarily easy, but simple, right? There's nothing, right? There's a period of openness. Use the stored energy in the body. This is why I love it, right? Because it's the pure physiology of the body. It's the essential purpose of body fat is there to power the body. And so the elegance and the simplicity of saying the whole plan is to open up this open space to just use the energy. There's nothing else, no giant math equations and counting all the carbs and figuring out all the macros. It's just this space. Could that become the easiest path, even if it never was easy? Could it be easier than anything else? Or could it be part of a process that actually works? Because if someone says whether it's easy or not is like, does something work or not? And I spent a huge amount of time trying to help people like work their way through weight loss, right? And some people can do that. I've talked a lot about exercise on this channel, for example. I'm a huge exerciser. I try to get everybody moving. The human body is a movement machine. But I'll tell you, it's rare, not zero, but it's rare that people only exercise their way to weight loss. And some people can do it. But in general, you need, whereas people can use a dietary practice to get themselves to weight loss without exercising. I think of people who are bedridden in a nursing home that have helped to lose weight, and it's brought tremendous benefit to them. In the ideal scenario, we have both of these things. We get active and help us get strong. It's beautiful. But the easiest path, the simple path, usually the most effective path, is to get on a dietary practice. And oftentimes that has elements of fasting in it. Open space that helps you move toward your goal and be losing weight. And then that can actually help it be easier and help you feel better to get more active. And that's usually the way I approach it. So use that fasting space in the most thoughtful, gentle way that is sustainable. That's the way I have people approach it. Queen Bee says, yeah, what am I focusing on? Yes, very good to think about. What is the focus? Where are we bringing our energy to? Like when we focus on a thing, we have a lot of mental horsepower up here. And this is part of the problem. I did the session a little back there on limiting our screens, right? Limiting the distractions. I think a big problem with the distraction is that it's scattering so much of our effort. And a part of that effort is the focus, right? It's like if we really want to move forward in a space, like there's only so many things we can do, right? People say like, what are your top 10 priorities? It's like, well, that's like an oxymoron, right? Like a priority is like the thing, right? If you want to take this next season and move forward in health, you say, I want to lose weight, improve my blood sugar. Okay, what is that a priority? And some people debate like, can you have two priorities? Maybe you can, but it gets gray, Focus in on a space, Christy was saying, okay, it's the boredom, it's the stress, it's the emotional, right? How do you move toward that space? How do you focus on it? Train yourself, teach yourself, give yourself the space to develop the strength of being able to handle those things. That would be a beautiful focus. Really nice to share this space with you all. Thank you for being here and for the questions and comments and thoughts. I finish out my last little coffee here, and then I'm going to get along to the rest of my Mother's Day here. Looking forward to that. I hope you all have a great week. Keep in touch over the week on the channel. You can always, any video, if you leave comments on a video, it comes into my little YouTube dashboard. Be happy to, if you have further reflections on this, throw in comments, or anytime if you're coming through this space. I think that's one of the things I really like about this live space. We can chat live, and then sometimes I have people coming through on lives that I did back in the fall, and then it's like we're still there. I just think that's cool, and having a chat about some of those discussions. I'm going to be live tomorrow morning, 8:30 in my private community. For those of you who are there, be happy to see you there, and we'll dive into some further thoughts on this. And All right, I'm going to set sail. I hope you all have a great week. Thank you again for being here, and we'll see you again soon.